In the last video, we talked about the basic strategy you'll use for your on-page SEO. But what about link building? How has that changed in recent years? Once again, the key is to focus more on quality rather than quantity. If you once had 1,000 different links all coming from low quality websites, this could now actually stand to hurt your SEO as it will look like link spam. If you've been guilty of using these old practices in the past, you might want to consider Google's link disavow tool, which you can find here at google.com/webmasters /tools disavow links main PLI equals 1. And there is a posting on Google's blog which explains how the tool works and everything, and you can read more about that at support.google.com /webmasters answer /2648487 HL equals EN. And what these tools do is it allows you to tell Google that you didn't ask for the low quality links and thereby prevent them from affecting your ranking. The fact that tools like this exist show that Google does still support good SEO, by the way. Once you've removed all your low quality links, you need to start looking for high quality links. Which ones are those? Simple. They're the ones that follow all of the advice that we gave in the last video on on-page SEO. These should be sites that are relevant to your niche/stroke industry, but also ones filled with the very best quality content and which seem to have an entirely engaged user base. In other words, look for the very best sites in your niche. Make your site as good as theirs and then approach them for a link. The sites that Google will rank highest for a particular search term are the ones that appear the most relevant and that have the best content and the best design. At the same time, though, they will also be the ones that have the most trust. This means Google considers them an authoritative resource and expects the information on their site to be accurate and well written. This is something that sites like Moz have tried to quantify with terms like trust flow. However, there's no defined method of determining a site's trust, and instead we have to infer the best strategies for building trust, as usual. What we do know is there are some sites that Google trusts absolutely implicitly. These are sites like harvard.edu, BBC News, etc. And how does it know it can trust them? Well, the current understanding is that Google will trust sites which either have a very well organized brand name, like the BBC or The Verge, or sites that have .edu or .gov domains. So, how can the rest of us thrive? Well, simple. We try to get links that come from those highly trusted resources. If you were able to get a link from BBC News, for example, this would absolutely transform your success. You would find you got hundreds of thousands of visits to your site simply from people clicking on your link, and this would result in hundreds or even thousands of dollars in AdSense and sales overnight. Meanwhile, if the content that was linked to was good, thousands of these people would post your link and share it. And more importantly, Google would sit up and take notice that the BBC had linked to your site. A highly trusted authority is linking to your site, suggesting that your site is also a highly trusted authority. This will be worth more to you than 1,000,000 links you bought, traded, or posted on link directories. If you can't get a link from the BBC, then where can you get a link from that will have a similar result? Unfortunately for many of us, it's nearly impossible to get a response from a massive site like the BBC, unless perhaps we have a newsworthy story and a useful contact. And so we're going to have to look elsewhere. A good place to start is with the Google News section of the SERPs. If you search for something like election results during an election, then you'll find that a few results are highlighted at the top of the page with an image and a snippet of text, as you can see here. Now, if you click here on the News tab, you can find more news and stories. Now, these news stories aren't manually curated, but are rather selected from sites that Google trusts. If a site is in Google News, then it's a pretty sure sign that that site has made it, especially in a competitive niche. And thus, it shows you exactly where you need to be getting your links from. If you can get links from any of these sites, then you're going to get almost the same boost as you would get from the BBC, although to a lesser degree. But how did these sites make it so big? Perhaps they got links from the BBC, in which case you're getting some of the benefit via their link to you. And the same thing would happen if they had a link from a site that had a link from the BBC. Try to think of this as a game of degrees of separation. You might struggle to get in touch with the very biggest authorities on the web, but if you can indirectly trace a link back to a big site, then you'll enjoy more love from Google the closer that relationship is. Chances are that you already know what the biggest sites in your niche are. These are the sites that are household names and that everyone goes to when they want information on your subject. Chances are they're also the same sites that end up in Google News. And because they're so big, they've probably got links coming in from other big sites. So, how do you get these big sites to answer you so that you can get some benefit from their links? And seeing as you're no longer allowed to buy links or do link swaps, how do you get them to link to you? Well, generally, the answer that most SEO experts recommend is using guest posts. A guest post is like a link swap, except that instead of swapping a link for a link, you're swapping free content for a link. Your job is to scope out sites that might be responsive to a message from you. Look at the type of content they publish and then write a post that's along the same lines. You then contact the site owner by email and show them your content, asking if they would like to publish it. The deal is that they can publish your post, but only if they include a link back to your site in exchange. They can do this by putting your link and bio in an author box, or they can do it by including your link naturally in the content of the article. By embedding the link this way, you make it look a lot more natural and you can send even stronger signals about the topic of your post. And remember that it's also highly important for the topics of sites linking to you to match the topic of your site. And this way, you're not only posting on a site you chose in your niche, but you're also filling it with a directly relevant post. This is a fantastic way to build links, but there are a few caveats. The first is that you still need to be careful. Matt Cutts, who used to work on Google Search, has made it clear that the overuse of guest posting can still lead to penalization. This is still a form of link manipulation. Likewise, you need to be careful about constantly using the same anchor text and generally being predictable. Mix it up. Finally, consider that it will still be hard to get an answer from top influencers in your niche. The solutions include making sure that your content and the site you're linking to are great quality so that the creator will be happy to be associated with them, delivering real value in the guest post, spending some time developing a relationship first, perhaps by sending some emails and maybe by leaving some comments on their blog, starting relatively small and working your way up. Look for blogs that are just ahead of yours. Each time you succeed, your site will get bigger and you'll be able to approach a slightly bigger influencer next time. Use your existing contacts. Maybe you have a friend who owns a blog. Network in person. And for making a big impact, nothing beats the power of actually meeting a blogger or a site owner in person and making a connection that way. Go to SEO networking events and generally don't be afraid to pick up the phone. A key lesson to apply to pretty much every aspect of SEO is not to get carried away when you find ideas that work. For example, just because quality is key, that doesn't mean that you need to disavow every low quality link and only ever build links from the top sites. Why? Well, you guessed it. It looks unnatural again, and actually it looks like manipulation. Take a look at sites like the BBC, and you'll see that they have a huge and highly diverse link profile. They'll have links from massive sites, but also tiny spam sites. When a site is truly successful, it'll lose control over all of its links, and this can be useful to make your links profile as diverse as possible. And one of the very best ways to do this is with link bait. Link bait is an article you've written specifically to try and get as many links to it as possible. How? One answer is to make your article a powerful resource, meaning that it will become a place for people to learn a particular subject matter. An example of this is the excellent guide to testosterone published on the art of manliness. This post goes much more in depth than many similar blogs on the same subject, and as a result, countless other articles have linked to it as a resource. Another option is to create a post that will somehow support a discussion. A good example of this is the post How to Win an Argument with a Nutritionist, which includes links to studies that disprove outdated notions about nutrition. The article is perfect link bait because people will regularly use it in online arguments to prove their point. Finally, one more very useful strategy for your backlink strategy is to perform backlink research for other sites. Look at your competition and look at which sites have got the most traffic in your niche. Then, once you've found which ones those are, try to get links from the same site. Not only does this method ensure that you're going after the right links that have a proven track record, but it also helps you to find links that are likely to allow guest posts. Regardless of all the changes that have happened, it's still possible to separate our SEO into largely on page and off page. I'm going to talk about on page now and off page in the next video of this series, but both are important. On page, of course, refers to all the strategies that you can use within your pages to get Google interested in your site. This begins with content, and it begins with having a stronger understanding of the subtle changes Google has gone through in recent times. One of the first things you're going to need to do is to fill your site with great content and to use your keywords throughout. There's a fine line to be walked here. You need to repeat the phrase a few times to ensure that you create that association. But at the same time, you also need to make sure that you don't overdo it and thereby appear to be spamming. Too vague? Well, as I mentioned, it's now agreed that the optimum keyword density for on-site content is 1 to 2%. This means you can use your phrase once every 100 to 200 words. But you also need to use your common sense a little. Some keywords are easier to use in a natural manner than others, and making sure your content sounds natural should always be the number one concern. Some keywords will be hard not to repeat 100 times. Others will never feel that they can come up naturally. The user always comes first, so if you can't fit the keyword in naturally anywhere, then just forget it and use it in your image, alt text, etc. The length of your post is also an important consideration. Back in the days of spammy SEO, almost every post was about 500 words long. Today, you'll have the most success by writing posts that are longer and more in depth. Imagine that your reader is going to sit down with a cup of tea and really dive deep into the subject. Yeah? That's the kind of experience you should be delivering. This has another advantage because it means that you can repeat your key phrase a lot more while keeping your density low. If you repeat your keyword 100 times and your content is 1,000 words long, then that's a 10% density. If your content is 5,000 words long, that's 2% density. Of course, 5,000 words is too long for most blog posts. Instead, the general consensus is that an ideal blog post will be somewhere in the region of 800 to 1,500 words. But again, remember that you serve your visitors first and foremost. These are the people that you want to impress, and that means you shouldn't worry too much about length. Do what comes naturally to your subject matter. Oh, and while you're at it, try to vary the length of your post a little. This again looks more natural and suggests to Google that you're not following a strict formula of any kind. At the same time, you also need to consider something called LSI, or latent semantic indexing. This is basically a fancy term for how Google now understands actual meaning rather than just looking to match words. The way it does this is at least partly by looking for synonyms and related terms when trying to answer questions. In short, don't just use the exact key phrase, but be sure to use lots of relevant and related language. This is important partly because it can prevent a mismatch between searches. If someone searches for a homonym like duck, how does Google know whether they mean the bird or the movement? Simple, by looking for related terms like duckling and feather, or perhaps dodge and dive. At the same time, the use of synonyms and related language again shows Google that there is a lot of content revolving around the same topic. It's not just a case of having mentioned the search term a few times in an otherwise irrelevant piece of writing. So, if you're writing about bicep workouts, then you need to make sure to include lots of related language like arms, triceps, dumbbells, training, weightlifting, etc. Doing this will confirm the subject matter of your site and will look a lot more natural and useful than if you just use the phrase. And for the same reason, it can also be a good idea to use variations on your key phrase and to have secondary search terms. For example, if your key phrase is build massive arms, then you should also try to include the terms build big arms, build big biceps, get big biceps, etc. Google now knows that this means the same thing, but won't be as likely to penalize you for keyword stuffing. It also makes you look like a better writer for your visitors. Essentially, try to keep in mind that Google no longer works by trying to match the search terms exactly in your content. You can see this yourself when you search Google. Search get big arms, and many of the results that come up won't actually include those precise words. Likewise, linking out to relevant sources might help Google to better understand the topic of your pages and posts, while also demonstrating that you're trying to provide extra value to your visitors. On that same note, you should also look at rich snippets. Using structured data, you can highlight to Google certain key elements of your content, like recipes, dates, company names, scores, etc. This helps Google show some of that information in the SERPs, the search engine results pages, and thereby attracts more visitors to your site. There are plugins which will let you do this easily, or you can do it through meta tags. Either way, you'll use this to do things like highlighting the ingredients in a recipe, or the show times of a play, or the score in a review. This is important because it lets Google understand your content even better than it is already able to do. Google is no longer just a search engine, but rather an AI. This is the direction that Google is heading, and being able to understand and utilize this might just be the key to SEO success in the future. Right now, using structured data and rich snippets will allow information from your site to appear right in the SERPs. This way, if someone searches for a recipe, they'll be able to see the ingredients for your version before they even click on your link. This means your listing will take up more space and demonstrates the value of your site. In turn, this means you're going to attract more clicks than a site without that information. The next element of on-page optimization is the site design itself. Using breadcrumbs, for instance, can help a lot, as can using alt tags for your images so Google knows what they are. More important is the actual function of your website. Does the page load quickly? Is it mobile friendly? Mobile friendliness in particular is something you absolutely cannot ignore today. In terms of the actual design and function of your website, the main goals are to ensure that your site will load quickly and that it will look great on mobile. Again, this helps to keep people on your site longer because it will be enjoyable for them to be there. Avoid using too many plugins, which will slow you down, and try not to inundate your visitors with adverts and popovers. Did you know that using light colors like light blues can actually help to keep people on the page longer by making them feel more relaxed? Consider this when picking your theme. Likewise, choose a theme that will adapt to the size of the display viewing it, and make sure you take advantage of things like caching to keep your site nippy. Themes that do this are called responsive insofar as they respond to the shape and size of the display they're being viewed on. This works by removing certain elements, by rearranging menus, etc., and by shrinking images. Note that mobile friendliness also means things like having large buttons, which are easier to click with a finger rather than a mouse, and avoiding mouse over drop down menus that, again, can't be operated on a mobile without a mouse. The best way to ensure that your website is responsive, that it looks the part, and that it will encourage the maximum engagement is to use WordPress. WordPress is a CMS, that's content management system, that makes it incredibly easy to build a responsive website and then add a custom theme that you've downloaded, either free or paid, or made yourself. Using WordPress removes much of the guesswork and makes it very easy for you to implement new layouts and even add things like rich snippets by downloading the right plugins. There's a massive online community to support your development, and the tool is used by many of the biggest sites on the net, meaning that it is a proven quantity as far as SEO goes. And you can find more here at WordPress.org. Seeing as WordPress is free, you're actually really making life harder for yourself by using anything other than it to build your website. Check your mobile friendliness on this site here, which is search.google.com/search console/mobile-friendly, and your page speed on this site here, which is developers.google.com/speed/page speed, all run together as one word, /insights. As I mentioned, there are a few miscellaneous tips that can also help to improve your on-page SEO. For example, it's generally accepted that using copyright notices and legal disclaimers can be seen as a positive sign by Google that these will make your website look more professional and more like a real business. Think as well about how you're going to help Google find the content within your site. Having a sitemap can be very helpful for indexing, for example. And you need to avoid using images that have text in them, and definitely avoid the use of Adobe Flash, seeing as Google is unable to read that type of copy. You can also insert your search terms into your site code by including it in file names, the file name of an image, for example, and including it in the permalinks. Now, these are the URLs of specific pages, which should match the title of your posts. Then you have the behavior of your visitors. In other words, how long are your visitors staying on your page? Do they click a lot of internal links? Do they scroll down the page? Are they leaving comments? Google wants to see that your site is offering value to your visitors, and the best way they can do that is by looking to see if people are actually enjoying the content you've created. Your site design is all about getting your visitors to spend a long time on your page and then to interact with it. You can do this by using related posts and by making your comment section appear more interesting and easier to use. But you should also do it by simply ensuring that your site looks great, performs well, and is filled with interesting and relevant content. Try to avoid adverts or bad design elements that are going to instantly put people off and cause them to leave your website. Remember, Google wants to see that people are spending time on your website, and the best way you can ensure this happens is by making content that people want to read. Moreover, you need to ensure that content is presented in a way that encourages people to stick around. Forget dense blocks of text with no images. Instead, Create content with lots of headers that's well spaced out and that uses large, beautiful pictures throughout. In terms of the actual writing, try to use a narrative structure where possible to really pull people in. Tell a story, use cliffhangers, and make it impossible for your visitors not to move down to the next line. Ultimately, it comes down to making sure you're providing the very best experience for your visitors, but doing so in such a way that Google can see and understand that that is the case.